Hello and welcome back to the Deckstar Plans channel. Today we're going to be recapping the second week of PQs from the Lawless Time. I'm joined by Chris and Ali. We all played at least one PQ this weekend. Ali played two. But yes, it's certainly been an interesting one. How did you guys find the weekend?
I had a great weekend. Yeah. I got a showcase in my entry packs at the Derby PQ and then finished second. So that was a good time.
Yeah, pulled your El Cliente showcase and then took hand 7 to the finals.
Yep.
Ali, you were playing El Cliente.
Yeah, I had a great weekend. I played a limited PQ on the Saturday and then constructed on the Sunday. Playing a bit of we both kind of played off the curve decks, but yeah, had a good time. Yeah, so Heather and Cormac top 8'd the limited PQ on the Saturday, and then Heather went on to top 8 the constructed on the Sunday, coming first after Swiss undefeated, so she was pretty happy.
What was Heather playing?
Boba Light Country is quite a unusual deck. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's quite
Super
high skills.
underground.
Yeah, quite hard to play.
Yeah, Bozo fair.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, it was a successful weekend for the team. So I think it was 5 top 8s between us, and yeah, some one finals and a couple top 4s. So yeah, very successful weekend.
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting weekend in terms of the meta, and I think it's good, like we said with the early PQ video, where we wanted to try something different to try and beat the early PQ field, and I think it'll be interesting now that there's a bit of an established meta to see what we're going to pick going forward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so speaking of, should we have a look at what people have been playing this weekend?
Yeah, so we'll go to the biggest one first, which I think was in America.
109 players, Cherry Hill.
Cherry Hill. Been there many a times.
That is a lot of space decks in that top. So what we got? Vader Yellow, Luke, Data Vault, Boba Lake Country. Is that 3 Boba Lake Countries it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looks like it, yeah.
Yeah. And interesting to see an Aura Singh making the top 8 there as well. I know people have been trying this red version.
It's quite rogue.
Played by Duncan Howard, for those that don't know. He's a bit of a control fiend. I don't know him, but every time I ever see his name, he always plays control. So I think he's trying to find something out. We'll maybe get his list up just now. Trying to figure out the control deck to play. Very difficult meta to play control in, I'd say. Quite punishing depending on the matchups, but it looks like he's went quite top end heavy with the only removal you can kind of get early on. Interested in no disintegrations in orders, probably with the Let's Call It War, is probably the best color combination you can get to give them 1 damage, and then Aura Sing effect that kind of works like it can kill anything that no disintegrations then. Leading into pretty good curve for removal into pretty good top end, I'd say. I think that
you got the Devastator and Planetary Bombardment to finish the game off pretty quickly, I guess.
Yeah.
If you ever, can get a turn off from removing your opponent's units.
And worst case, it can be a board wipe if you use that to then distribute 12 amongst units as well.
I just don't think I think the curve isn't there yet for control in this type of meta. I just don't think the gap between sort of Devastator and Annihilator is too much compared to like the Super Laser into Avenger meta, which it was just the perfect curve to go sort of 8 into 9, and they're just not the same anymore. And you have the Super Laser just now, so I wonder if there will be a sort of big push towards something that will be like a big follow up to the Super Laser. And if there is, I think this colour will be the right colour because of the Super Laser.
Yeah,
makes sense. 100%. I like the Canto Bite security there as well. That will help ramp into the bigger things, as well as being a Sentinel. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and that thing's really good into the base decks, I suppose. When they pilot and then make a sort of big unit, you can lock that unit down and give your base an extra, 7-8 damage if you lock that unit down.
And the nice thing with Aura is you effectively give everything else +1 power, so anything with 4 health that's attacking into your Canto Bite dies anyway.
Yeah.
Quite an interesting deck. It'd be interesting to see how.
Can we see what he played against?
Yep, I'll just go back to it.
There you go, down the bottom.
Is that one?
Yeah, if you just go down on
yeah.
the left.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah. So that's three and one.
So Tobias, Django, Jin, Boba, Lando, Chewie, Vader, Towson, and Obi. So lost to Chewie and Obi-Wan Virgins Temple, I think.
The Chewie, that makes sense to me. I can see it's just such an aggressive deck. I can see that being a tough matchup.
Is that Wu playing
you-
Obi?
Yeah, that was
yeah, looks like it.
Yeah. Very interesting choice, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Has he got
Towson
anything
makes
interesting
sense.
in his list?
we'll have a look. But I just want to say before we finish it, I think it's interesting that he never played against any Bobas. But he played against one actually. But Boba Command, not Boba.
Lake Country.
Is
the
that
Lake Country
Boba
definitely
Colossus?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, Boba Colossus. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I suppose 35 is one more than 34.
Yeah. 6 is also one more than 5, though.
And that's more of a number than.
So if
I
we
guess
look
it's
at
interesting. Yeah.
look at Wu.
That's sort of.
Is he doing anything out of the ordinary? So I know we spoke about the Annihilator there, that bridge from 8 to 11. I think one of the biggest control pieces at the moment is Yoda. That 8-drop Yoda, healing the 5 and just pinging units, it makes a big difference.
Yep. It's there. No way to cheat up to it, I guess. So you do actually just have to wait until you get to 8 resources.
Yeah,
But
because
you've got a lot of control options.
I just want to say he's not playing Virgin's Temple, which is
Oh, so he's not.
Oh, yeah.
He's on the 28 Force, which does make a difference. It really does. You're less
that
leaning
makes
on
a
the
lot of sense.
Consular, but he's not even got Consular in the list.
I
You can
think
also use the Force more than once a turn then.
Yeah.
So you
It
can like
makes
Itinerant
Chirrut a
Warrior
good
and
unit
buff
again.
or something. Chirrut, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. He's got 3 of Yoda's lightsaber and 3 constructed lightsaber. So
I like it. The Yoda's lightsaber.
I guess that's how you beat space. Stick a Yoda's lightsaber and Obi-Wan and race.
Because not only does it heal the 3, but it gives you the +3 as well. So it's in theory a 6 damage swing on the turn that you play it.
He's got 1 Ray in the sideboard as well, which I guess was pretty useful into the hard control matchup.
I think both the lightsabers probably come out at the same turn until they'll go in against space, and then you just completely.
Yeah.
Is that then you restore 3? You get 3 healed off Yoda's, and then restore 2 from the constructed lightsaber. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you're healing 5, pushing 8 damage. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Interesting to see the Taramin as a one-of in the main and one in the side, because I suppose that is the only real credit hate you get in blue-green.
Yeah.
There are a few in blue green, but I think you don't want to be playing the ones early because you lose the opportunity to get the Force. You have the one that negates credits and the one that defeats a credit when played. But this one actually has a pretty relevant effect, and on 5 you're not as bothered about the Force as you would be on. As you probably got other units as you would be on 3 and 4.
Especially if you've already flipped your Obi, given the XP, because Obi can only do non-upgraded. You can then play your Tamarin after and get a second XP.
You're mostly, presumably, using that in the Lando matchup as well.
Yeah.
Did he play a Lando? Doesn't look like he played a Lando. So he probably never played the card, to be honest.
No.
I guess he played Chewbacca, maybe. There we go.
But yeah,
against Chewbacca.
for a Chewie, playing it on 5.
But yeah, that's too late. But against Lando, presumably you get the XP. You get 2 XP off it or something. That's probably enough to move some units out of Bo-Katan range, and then probably makes that a bit better, I'd imagine. So kind of makes sense.
The other big deck, well, before we talk about Boba, but the other one here is Vader, which didn't have as much representation as we thought it would, but I think it probably gets a bit shut down by Boba. But I think Vader's skill ceiling's, a lot higher than it used to be. I think he's got loads of tools now, especially with Beguile. Is that Baldown he's playing?
I think so.
The Palpatine on the flip. It means that you basically just need one spaceship going on turn 1, and then you could just control until flip. And And that means that you don't take any damage on base early from the kind of aggressive decks, and then the flip into the Sentinel means that you can get you always get value from your Leader flip as long as you start with at least one space unit. So I think it has game into a lot of decks. I just think maybe some people aren't having success yet because they're still trying to play aggressively, whereas I think it's completely shifted towards the Beguile lines, into Bogdown, into the Death Star Skirmisher and the Working Snub. So you.
But what do you do? What do you do against like Luke?
So that's what I'm saying. So you have to continually exhaust them.
Just control.
Yeah.
If they can't attack, they can't ping, they can't.
Yeah.
What's that upgrade called? The green
I'm
one.
glad you asked.
Dorsal turret, right? It does.
Yeah, dorsal turret. I can't even remember what that does.
Oh no, the image won't load.
Attach units against when this unit deals combat damage to a unit whilst attacking. Oh, okay, so it's basically death touch on the dorsal. I suppose that then lets you. Maybe that's for killing stuff like Luke's or stuff like that. Like, I guess if you don't have any removal, that can be removal.
If they've claimed you've still got a TIE fighter around, it's like 1 cost removal for any unit.
Yeah, they play a Liberty, you play a dorsal turret, your 1/1 kills it.
Yeah, again, leading more into the control lines. I think it's probably pretty good into look when you have a TIE fighter that's just going to kill for 1 cost, kill anything. I can see a world where on 4 you Beguile plus this to clear the board.
Yeah, that's a really cool inclusion.
Yeah. And then we'll just cover this Boba just because he won the biggest event. But the big boogeyman of the weekend, I think, is this Boba Lake Country. It won a PQ the week before, and I think everyone jumped on it. What are you guys thinking of Boba? Cuts a colour and becomes insane.
I know we all sort of think, it is the easy deck, but I like that people are including a lot more ground these days. It's not just pure go space, do a lot of indirect. You're interacting with stuff like Cyril and 000 and stuff like that. It's like you have got game on the ground as well as in space, and you can sort of split your threats.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Well, I think you just have to play. There's not enough red units to play units apart from the ground units, so you just have to spread them out. I think there's quite a lot of cool interactions in terms of if you know the matchup slightly more, that you can get a lot of advantage. It's not, obviously it's play to curve, a bit like P it was, where you play to curve, and if you get the perfect curve, you're very favoured in any matchup. But there is just a few situations where getting initiatives early and taking less damage on your base, putting less damage on their base favours you. And I think a lot of people haven't appreciated that yet because they've just picked up the deck to try and, do well at a PQ. And you can see the ones who have done well with these decks tend to be people who have already done well before. So I think it's quite easy to play, and I think it's probably quite an easy deck to get top 8 with if you're looking to, get those last points towards a PQ. But I think quite a hard deck to win with. So I think winning with these decks, when against, this guy's won in a field with Wu, Duncan Howard, and this guy's 5th is the best. I've played against him loads of times in Caravas, don't think I've won a game. So I think winning this PQ at 100 and however many players it was is pretty impressive.
Absolutely.
Winning a 109 player PQ is always impressive, so fair play.
Yeah.
So I think next biggest was 99 players, also out in the US. That one had, again, won by a Boba, but it had a Dedra Colossus make the finals. It's another one of those very controlling decks. 32
Would you play this over Aura Sig?
I don't know. I'm not sure any are particularly. I mean, interesting. This guy didn't play a Boba again until
the finals.
I think probably be a hard matchup for this. So I'll just get the deck image up.
Yeah, it's a mad one because only ground units is 3 outer rim constables, and all of the space units cost 7 or more.
I mean, that's your plan, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you play...
kill everything, and then wait until you can start playing Star Destroyers and win.
Yeah, and so stuff like the trophy that they've got.
3 Annihilator in the main deck. Come on.
2 Nebula Ignition as well. Yeah.
It's interesting. The actual Daedra effect's pretty interesting with the aggressive negotiations in the side. I wonder if you
Yeah.
the sword deck that
You're going to
um,
draw a lot of cards with Dedra because they're not going to let you ping as often as you want. But as a control deck, you don't really care because you're drawing more card advantage, you're drawing more answers, you're going to see the stuff you want to see. It's kind of a
Yeah,
win-win.
I think I'm imagining there are games where you have like 12 cards in hand as well, and if you've got like 12 cards and you've got an Annihilator out there, you can aggressive negotiations for like 24 and almost one shot a base. That seems pretty good. Playing Hold for Questioning for 5 resources.
yeah, this card's going
I
up in stock. This card's very good, isn't it? Especially with leaders plotting and then leaders coming out on a spaceship and then hold for questioning, especially on this 35 base. You can probably take a hit and then hold for questioning next turn, and you've kind of this 5 cost heals 7 exhaust a unit. It kind of it can kill you many vigilance. You can take out the other card that might kill you until you can get to your single reactor ignition the turn after. I think you probably play it on the 7 resource turn to lean into the single reactor ignition, exhaust the biggest unit, and then clear the
that
board.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's very good on 5, so I think you probably play it in the 7. Yeah, interesting deck. Need to see how that goes. This is one by a Boba
Yellow. So yeah, you trade your 4 health for the more interesting yellow units, stuff like the guerrilla soldiers and just slightly more aggressive stuff.
I think the big thing you get with yellow is probably battle.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Hold for Question, there's a lot of big value trades now in terms of that's why Kanan's so good, because they can bounce like a 4 cost whatever, and Big Al can carry that all the way up to 6, and especially I'd imagine the Boba Mirror, you can control the boards, they put down a spaceship, and then you beguile it, and then they've got nothing to flip and topple you with. So I think that's probably one line. I think it loses the 4 health is massive, I think, into those ground aggro decks, because the amount of times you see the Boba Light countries get to like 31 and then just annihilate them with topple, and you basically can't get there with this. So I think it's interesting. I think it probably has a better match into the Boba Light country, but worse into everything else. I wonder what he played against, if he played him, and he didn't play any Boba Light countries.
You also get Commandeer and Sideboard with yellow, which is interesting.
I love
other space
Commandeer
decks, I
into
guess.
the current meta. I think it's a very useful card for many situations.
Yeah. And you can also bet a couple of Darth Vaders. I think it's just this colour, this space yellow colour. I think if I was going to play yellow space, I'd probably play Vader, just for the more control aspects, but...
But I suppose this is potentially favoured into Vader, as they haven't got many places to put their indirect damage.
Yeah, Vader's always struggled into Boba, and I can't imagine that changes even with the control stuff, unless you think differently, Ali.
I don't know. I still think that there's a massive gap in terms of, I reckon it really has the tools to do okay. It's just not the same as it used to be, whereas you used to just be all focused on attacking the base. I think it's all this kind of hard control deck, and I think Boba has to start on the ground now most of the time, so then you may have the advantage in space almost all game. The issue is the IG unit that Boba has access to that Vader doesn't, and that can clear the board up. So I think it depends on that, really, more than top or anything. If you look at this Spanish one, Qui-Gon, which I know some people in the team were talking about before.
Yes, and it's an interesting finals. Qui-Gon versus Slime or Data Vault.
Right.
Yeah, this Qui-Gon list is quite interesting. They've sort of moved away from the early combo turns, and now they're more focusing on getting a Yoda down and then repeating that over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting if he can get there, but I also think it's quite a big if, because it's just takes a lot to get to.
Interestingly, this list isn't playing Max Rebo. They're playing the Rebo band, but they're not playing Max Rebo himself. An easy way to get to Yoda is to play Rebo, jump from 4 to 6, 6 to 8, and then you're playing the Yoda when they're the turn after they deploy their leader. But in the same vein, you're not putting a lot of units out, so your Yoda damage isn't going to be as high.
Sounds like a good way to die to aggressive negotiations to me.
But yeah, I suppose this works well with the Rebo band, because then you're getting the credits to get that early Yoda, but not necessarily having to skip
I think
the turns.
That makes sense. Plus, you can still bounce. Doesn't matter how many resources you actually spend for the Yoda, you can still bounce it and play a 7 drop with it, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you play it on 6 with 2 credits and then get yourself Callum afterwards, you're feeling pretty happy.
And then Max Rebo's band's quite hard to kill.
Yes.
The 1-5 is, even people who've played limited, they get to notice how hard this is to kill, and I think it's such a risky strategy, but you can. It's the same as Qui-Gon's always been. Maybe this guy's cracked it, but you can see a world where you just go bomb after bomb after bomb, and then once you get 2 going, it's quite hard to, because then they have to kill the bomb instead of the Max Rebo band, so then you're always every turn, and then
either that or they're going to face and you're still getting the credits anyway.
Yeah, so weird, but maybe it's good.
I do want to shout, one of the best cards in that Qui-Gon deck is Depa Balaba. If you could not play a Force unit the entire start of the game until you hit that 6 drop, and you Depa Balaba, gain the Force, bounce her again, and then you just snowball from there.
Makes sense.
So here we go, yeah, Sly Data Vault. This one is a very weird list.
I think
some interesting one-offs.
Yeah, I mean, so the aim of Sly is to go wide. The flip turn's really important. They plot out Palpatine, Jar Jar, which are quite powerful plots in themselves. And then they control the board with the Sly. You kind of have to kill the Sly so their spies stay alive and the units stay alive, and they get value every turn. They play lots of early units, which then means that they are run out of cards to play on 5 or 6, and then they can make more spies later on. The biggest kind of bomb in this deck is Crucible. They would kind of have 5 or 6 little weenies, and then the Crucible buffs them all up. And they've kind of got the reload with the I Am the Senate, which makes 6 spies on 6.
It's the Vader of the ground.
So it is, but I think ground's so much easier to deal with.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I think it probably eats. I'm not sure what he played, but I think it probably eats sort of Boba because there's no interaction that they can really have.
At least one.
Lost the first one.
Play 2. Yeah, one Boba Yellow, one Lake Country.
I played Lake Country in the top 4 as well. Pete. So the same person he lost in round 1 against.
Yeah.
Turned it around in the top 4. So kind of makes sense. Yeah.
I think it's okay. I just think it's like one of these things where if you know how to play against it, it becomes significantly worse.
I suppose, yeah, if you put a lot of focus onto controlling their early units.
Because once you realise that apart from the Eye on the Senate, they have no late game, so then you put them on, and they have to spend their hand early to get advantage. So they're kind of always going to be in top deck mode. So, they might top deck Eye on the Senate, and they might get back in it, but they might top deck, a weak A Pirate or a C-3PO when they get nothing on board. And it makes it quite a risky strategy, I'd say, for a big event.
I feel like I'd love to play against this deck with Han. I think that would be a very good matchup for me.
Well, I suppose, speaking of, should we have a look at Derby?
Yeah.
Derby.
So yeah, Derby was the event that myself, Chris, and Kieran played. Chris, you made top 8, and it was an interesting top 8 here.
It was, yeah.
So yeah, there was Poe Data Vault, Sly Data Vault. No, sorry, not Sly Data Vault.
Luke Data Vault.
Luke Data Vault, Lando Data Vault, lots of Data Vault.
Yeah, there was a lot of Data Vault. I felt like there was a lot of Pirate pilot aggro in the room generally.
Yes, that's certainly how it felt to me.
So, yeah, that's kind of what we were expecting, I guess. The top 8 does sort of reflect that, but then all of the pilots lost in the top 8, basically. And we had 4 sort of primarily ground-based decks in the top 4.
Well, yeah, so this was your list, your weird hand 7. We thought we were safe from hand for a set, but apparently not.
All the hand solo leaders are good.
Yeah, so we played quite a bit of this, and we're a bit worried about space before, Chris, but I think towards the end of testing we found some lines that worked, and I think the idea is that they are not testing into this and you tested into space, so I felt a bit more comfortable into space. Did you play against any of the Boba decks? Because we didn't really test that before.
I didn't play against Boba. I've tested that a little bit, and I don't think it's a great matchup. Yeah, I guess rather than go into too much detail for this, I'd say I have just recorded a video with Mike from KTOD on this. So if you want more information on this deck, I would suggest go and watching that video.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we'll put out some form of succinct deck tech for this.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
This
the
was
winner
the
event.
Winner event, who I think we're going to channel as well.
Yes.
It's Kyle, so we'll try not to get too much information on this as well. But well done to Kyle for kind of rebooting this Lando data vault. I think Lando's had quite a bad weekend. I think, as expected, he struggles into. I think he has a good matchup into sort of Luke, but not into Boba. And then I think that Predator hit on top of that made it quite difficult. But Kyle managed to sort of get a decent green version instead of going blue, and seemed to do well. So it'd be interesting to see what he's got to say on the channel when he comes on.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have him on soon.
Should we have a look at Buku's Chewbacca deck as well?
Yeah, which I think is quite a nice one. So this is utilising the new rare base from this set. It's basically shield generator with an extra point of health.
It's more tricky than that, actually. So I played Buku in the top 4. Obviously, I had pings, which made the shield usage a bit worse. And I think he used the base in the first game to create an XP, and in the second game to create a credit so he could flip Chewbacca on turn 2. Yeah. Might not be how it normally goes, I imagine. But yeah, I just think it's a interesting take on Chewbacca, and the sideboard especially. I looked at and I was like, what do these cards do? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a super interesting one.
I think this deck did quite well last week. I won a PQ last week. And before going into this weekend, I think Cormac and I thought that this would be more represented at the PQs we were at. So we practiced quite a lot into it and lost a bit. And then once you know how it works, it doesn't have the tools that other decks have, I don't feel. So it's interesting, but I think it runs out of steam, especially if you know how to what to expect. So I think it's got a very good surprise factor. Yep. Now I think it's out. I think it's going to be difficult to do well with this at sort of big events, but maybe it could still be a good PQ deck.
From what I understand, it likes to use diplomatic immunity a lot. You either get your Chewie or you get another sticky unit, and you just keep piling the diplomatic immunities on. Make it just harder to kill.
I did find that quite good against me, actually, because it puts you in the weird position where it's a really difficult disclose requirement for them to meet, but you run the risk of attacking into Chewbacca and just being blown out because they can meet the disclose requirement, which kind of puts you off from swinging into the Chewbacca, or you have to plan around it. And so it's kind of interesting that you could, I'm guessing he actually very rarely meets that disclose requirement because he doesn't have a lot of hero or blue cards, really. But probably the threat of it is enough.
Sage, Constable, and the one drop in blue are all hero.
All the events are not.
But potentially, yeah. I'd be interested to know how often he does hit the disclose. But you can't count it out. It's like with Condemn. You always swing with a Condemn unit if you've got the actions, just in case.
Well, but the difference is you can kind of test Condemn for free, whereas you need to attack into the Chewbacca to see if they have the disclose. So there is a risk there. If they do have the disclose, then you are punished for it. Whereas if your opponent is claimed and you attack their base with a condemned unit, you lose nothing.
Yeah. So I see you hovering over there, Ali. I played this deck during the Swiss, and I thought it was very, very interesting. Yeah, it's got a lot of, well, not a lot. It's got a lot of high damage, sticky-ish units in the early game that he sort of used to control, and then just before or around the flip turn, he sort of turns the corner, starts hitting you in the face, and starts hitting you in the face very hard. So things like Lat Razzie to kill your early plays, and the Honor Bound Partisan to get Honors down on turn 2, and yeah, it's a very interesting get. So one of my games against him, I thought I had an easy win. I had my client out, Sudden Ferocity and Battle Fury. I knew that if I got that swing and another swing out, I could have won the game. But he deployed, plotted Double Ferocity, and then that basically meant that I then had to interact with his board instead of just ignoring him and going to face. And yeah, unfortunately, he stole that one from me. But it was, very interesting list. The Expendable Mercenary is huge for this deck. Getting your Saw out a turn early is really interesting. And then that still gives you 5 resources to plot Ferocity and play a 2-drop.
Yep, makes sense.
MC30 is also just a good card.
I think it was decent. I'm not sure. Did he play Space? I did it. So I'm not sure if it's got all Space action. I think we're past the days of, because this is the 34 base now, so I think we're past the days of just Hana being your only space. A lot of decks would rely at the start of just like Hana and the Restore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the 34 is so far away from 30, it feels like that the math just doesn't add up a lot of the times, especially from the really interactive flip where you flip into the topple.
Yeah, so it definitely looks like the sideboard is more aimed at those space decks. So your Eager Escorts, your Cavern Souls, direct hit, and then more Hammerheads. The Hammerheads into space units can be huge because you're effectively a 6/6 that gets +6 and overwhelm when you attack a space unit.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to talk about this Talzin before we Talzin Yellow. The main thing I wanted to just chat about was this Cyborg card, which I think the legacy run in Talzin's probably fixes that they have into space. So I think Talzin's probably one of the strongest decks. If space decks didn't exist, it probably would be definitely the strongest deck if it didn't. And if you played it well, I think you'd probably win almost all your games. Interestingly, they're not even playing the Stranger in yellow.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing Legacy Run adds is you play it on 5, and you can either trade and do 6 damage, and if you can't trade, you can like Talzin Assassin your own Legacy Run into sorry, not 12 damage, 6 damage.
Or you also side in your Shuttle and play that the following turn. There you lose a unit, you lose the Legacy Run, and then you trigger it.
Or there's a couple of things you can do with that Shuttle the next turn. If you Legacy Run, you can clear up all the board but one unit, and then Shuttle to kill the leader. Quite interesting deck. I think this is probably the way to go now with Talzin. Relying a little bit less on the Force because you don't need it as much because you've got this these big 3-drops, which you're going to get the Force going into 4, the Treya and the Shinhati. So be interesting to see where this ends up. I think this is a bit of an unexpected deck for me that's done quite well. Let's see how it goes on.
Yeah, clearly expecting the space with the EMPs in the main deck.
this card is up in value a lot, I think, in terms of keeping your end
I can
games.
see that being good in Towson as well.
Yeah.
Because you can kill a 3 health unit with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll just cover the one that we went to. Which ones?
Towards the top, I think. There you go, Stockport.
So, Stockport PQ had 8 different decks in top 8. They'll look bias client, Oba, Obi-Wan, Piet, and Slimer again. So if we just go over the Piet list, I thought it was quite interesting and quite. I think the way maybe hard control should go down, because they can get the Cantwell Cruiser on like way earlier than anyone else can. It means that advantage from that. So on flip turn you can get the Cantwell Cruiser out, which I think is the most control play you can do. So I think if you're looking at control, this is probably the type of deck you want to go for, especially into these space decks where you can sort of lock down space and then hopefully try to control the ground with these big units. It's got Condemn as well. I think it's quite interesting. I wonder if this is the way that you go with control.
It's definitely worth trying.
Mm.
And then I assume most of those are droids. Yeah, and you've got the totally out of aspect interrogation droid. That's quite cool.
Yeah, from the hand.
Yeah.
He's not fallen too much into the trap of playing every 2-drop droid that you can for Invisible Hand, because at the end of the day, it's a 6/6 that you can get down on 5, and mostly you're using that for that. The droids are just incidental value, you know.
I mean, you've got 12 hits there, I reckon, most of the time you're heading off it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But yeah, you're probably more likely to want to see a gonk than you are to see a follower of the code sort of thing, you know.
This is my deck list. I played the client, unsurprisingly, for those that have been following the page. Thought it was a good deck choice for this weekend, especially into the field of Obas. I think that going forward, this deck is probably going to get. So this year, we thought that this deck was probably only going to be good this weekend for a bit of surprise factor, but I think with the uptick in Bobas, it actually becomes significantly better after this weekend than it was before. And I actually don't think I won any games from the surprise factor anyway. I just think it's quite hard to interact with and quite a hard leader to sort of.
It's a surprising deck in that not many people are playing the leader, but it doesn't do anything completely unusual necessarily. It's an aggressive deck, you know.
Yeah, we're just wondering if sometimes you get a free exhaust off, but it never really happened.
Yeah.
And still managed to get top 4. Disappointed we didn't go the full way with it because I thought it would be interesting to show that off, but struggled a bit into Luke, who I lost to twice, which was a bit unsurprising. Which was a bit surprising because we in testing it went quite well, but this guy's deck had a lot of pilots in it, and it's difficult. I sort of didn't see the lines into them, which can sometimes happen into pilot decks, but.
Like Chewbacca's and Luke's and
which
and 3 of the R2s as well. Wow.
I think they sort of just crippled me a couple of games. Ping on the client shields can sometimes.
Because if you can't suit up the client, then they've got ping plus an air superiority, and he's dead.
Yeah, I think this look that was quite interesting. I think he was with the extra pilots. It meant that he could. I'm not sure if this is what he did, but I think the idea with Luke is you could put the indirect damage on the ship and then get the Luke on the ground eventually. After trading. Got a Beckett here.
I still think Beckett is a very powerful deck, but it is one of those that requires the reps and the knowledge of the lines to be able to do anything well with it.
Interestingly, on Beguile again, so leaning more into having an option to have a bit more control, which I think is probably right. I just think Beguile into the space matchups can something, especially if you're playing Hauler. A lot of the ways that the Boba Light Country works is that they start with a ground unit, and then if you play a Hauler, that can usually trade into their space unit. So then a Beguile becomes really high value because you can sort of Beguile that they would Boba into, because your Hauler might kill the other one, and then your Tobias will get it back. So
And the other thing that this deck can do is that hyperspace disaster on 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the credits, and you can just absolutely ruin a Luke or a Boba's day. So yeah, this was Thomas Rose's winning list. This is the deck he
surprised
played.
we didn't see.
After you.
I'm surprised we didn't see more Val Reds, and generally, I think it's a pretty good deck, and I personally really don't like playing against it because it's always hard to know whether to expect them to give you the credit because they have the Arval or not, or it's just tricky. But yeah,
this has seemingly become what the Jin shell was. So where people have started out with the whole I'm going to draw loads of cards and be in the colours that draws lots of cards, seemingly it's looking like Vel might just be the slightly better leader for that shell.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's an aggressive meta, drawing cards. It's kind of useful, but kind of not. Like, you're going to end the game with like 6 or 7 cards in your hand, maybe, as Jin, which is great for an aggressive negotiations, but it means you've invested a lot into drawing those cards instead of doing something more proactive necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, still leaning on that out of aspect Kanan to get a bit of a tempo swing. I think that is the only out of aspect in the deck, if I'm not mistaken. And then 1 blue ace in the side.
Yeah, that makes sense. Blue ace is really good in the meta at the minute. With all the space decks going around, it's pretty much always a 2-for-1.
I think again, this likely. I'm not sure what Thomas's game plan is, but I'd imagine that it probably races space quite well with the extra buff, and there's not much punish for giving them an extra credit early. I don't know, but the 27 base into 34 seems. I think it's hard because it's difficult because you never play against really experienced, good sort of bubble-like country players. So it becomes like you can think that you've got a good matchup into Boba because you bet them all, and then
you play a good pilot, and then it's.
I just think it's like, so I think overall from this weekend, Boba has won loads of PQs, and I think the PQs it's won have had really high attendance and have really good players at them. So I think the deck is good and good to get you top 8, and I think just brushing it off saying you got a good Boba matchup is probably just because you play so many Bobas, and I think there's probably lines that it has that beats almost all the decks. So I think it'd be interesting going forward, because I think that looking at this, you would think that it probably does have a good Boba matchup, but I wonder. I know another very good player was playing Vel Red at this event, who's in, I think he's in the top 10 of the sort of rankings, and he lost to 2 Bobas, so I think it'd be interesting going forward. I don't know. I think it's hard to determine how good Boba is because it's not a deck that very good players typically play, and they don't like the pilot decks. And I think it's something we need to think about as, it's easy, although we might not like it, it's easy saying these decks are, it's easy to play, so we shouldn't play them, but they're very good. If you can play them 2 or 3% better than the rest of it, than everyone else, then you might do very well. So I think it's something that people should look at if they're wanting to, one, improve their performance overall. And I think just saying that you might not win a PQ with Boba probably isn't true, which is what I said before the weekend, and I've clearly proven wrong. So I don't think Boba is just a deck to get to the top 8. I think it's a deck that could win you PQs with experience.
So what do you guys think of the current meta? Would you say healthy meta, leaning too far towards pilots? Like, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think the big thing is the sector in a couple of weeks in America is going to determine how the rest of the meta is going to shape up. Obviously, we have 2 events and 2 big events in Europe in terms of London and Prague. I think the American event's quite close to London, like 2 weeks before. So I think whatever happens in America is probably going to be the meta for London, and probably until something else wins London, which I think it will, because I think that a lot of the European players won't play these pilot decks that Americans tend to play as much. But I think that the meta will be shaped by that regardless. So I think that, there's a chance that one of these pilot decks will win the American sector, and that will lead to a high representation of pilot decks
Going forward from there, yeah.
forward until the European sector, which I don't think will be won by a pilot deck.
I think you're kind of conflating two things there. I think like a lot of the better players don't like playing the pilot decks. And I think that's not because they're simple decks to play. I think that's because they are decks that are relatively easily counterable generally if, you are prepared for them, and they're fairly sort of linear in terms of what they do, which is also kind of an inherent weakness of the deck itself, I think. So I think I agree in that I think there will be a lot of Boba Fett's, but I would imagine that Prague probably won't be won by a pilot deck. But I think there is a bit of like subtlety there around what the top players are likely to want to play, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely in that early meta where things are going to be aggressive, things are going to be fast. There is definitely the potential for the format to slow down when people figure out the best ways to counter these things. But for now, it is a race to the finish line.
This isn't going away, this Boba thing. I think that the late country just makes the topple so much more consistent, as we talked about before in the last video, and I think that in itself just gatekeeps a lot of decks out of the format.
Yeah, it is objectively broken.
You can't really play Obi-Wan Virgins because you can't put the damage on your base. You have to put the damage on your units because you're on 25, and then topple on 5 range, and then topple on 6 range, and then so that deck used to keep a lot of decks out with the Consular. So now that deck is out. Boba, I don't know. I just think Boba gatekeeps a lot, and you can have to beat Boba.
So it's interesting that Wu switched to the 28 health force base, right? Looking at that as someone who people will look at the decks that he plays and take inspiration from that because he's a very good player. I think that suggests something that, and I'd be interested to know what that Boba Fett matchup is like, because you've got a lot of the blue hero restore there, probably can race reasonably well. Topple is still pretty dangerous, but you've also got quite a few sort of fairly chunky units, so you might be a little bit more resilient to it. So I don't know. I think that would be interesting to see.
And
I was also on the. Go on.
I was going to say with the Obi-Wan, if you have cracked the Boba matchup, and everyone else is trying to crack the Boba matchup, then just being that like Obi-Wan and presumably Talzin as well can then beat all the decks trying to beat Boba just inherently. Like Obi-Wan can usually beat, like the kind of ground aggro decks just with the Sentinels and things like that. So it just really struggles in the space decks. So if Talzin and Obi-Wan can crack those decks, then it might be things looking to go forward. And I think we've seen some evidence of that over the years.
So I'm going to ask you, Ali. I saw you played Ally Kane in your deck, right? I presume that was for topple mostly.
It's difficult. I think just with the way the client works, there's nothing to play on 4 resources. So I played. There's a couple of cards you could play. You could play the shuttle. You could play other things, but they didn't seem to do anything. And I felt like Ally Kane at least had 4 attack and could hit things. Just
Okay.
a wee fun thing that I did do was that in my top 4 match against Luke, I played Ally Kane and he had 4 resources, and one of his sleeves had like a bend in the bottom left corner. So you pick the cards, and I was like, why's that got a bend in it? I wonder if it's from when he's plotted the card. And see the way you like when you plot. So I said to him, I bet I'm going to pick 3, but I bet you that one's Cinta because of the way you plotted. And then the judge is like, no way, and he flipped it and it was Cinta, and I think it is from the way it was a tiny little.
That's the
most impressive thing I've ever done.
There you go. That's how you guarantee an Ally Kane hit.
Yep.
Right. Let's not get involved in whether or not that requires a judge or anything else. But yeah, just make sure your sleeves are unmarked when you play.
The judge was there and thought, well, you've been punished by having a marked sleeve.
Yeah, yes.
Anything else?
I think definitely as the season goes on, we might see more people trying the control route. So I think certainly at the UK sector there'll be more control than there was at the American one.
I don't know. I'm not convinced by that. I think if Boba Fett remains a big deck, I don't know how these hard control decks can beat that. Because you can just, you're already playing 3 Devastators. You stick a couple of planetary bombardments in the sideboard. Like, how is Aura hard control or anything going to beat that? It just doesn't seem likely to me. People will play it, but I can't imagine the meta will be in a position where hard control is a reasonable meta pick, if that makes sense. But I could be proven wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's been a reasonable. I mean, I don't think it's been a reasonable pick for
A long
whenever.
time.
Yeah, I just think the way the game goes and the way the game's been developed is to push those really hard control decks out.
Yeah.
And I think probably for the best for the game. I think having control like Talisman and things like that is fine. For a way to control. I just think those kind of non-interactive decks aren't. They were too powerful for too long. So I think sort of. I mean, they could do with a wee bit of a buff, so you can at least see them. But just now, there's no way they can play.
Yeah, I know. The developers have said they don't want hard control, but yeah, it's not going to stop people from trying.
Well, fundamentally, there isn't a good enough win condition in those decks at the minute, right? Like previously, before rotation, your win condition against a lot of decks was vigilance and restock, and thank goodness that's gone away because that was very, very grindy. But there's nothing that's kind of come in to replace that. Like you can play an Annihilator, sure, but in a very grindy matchup, that's not necessarily going to win you the game. Like, I don't know. There's kind of something missing there, I think. I'm not quite sure what it is.
There we go. Well, yeah, so I'd be interested to hear what other people out in the wide world think. So yeah, if you think any of our takes are wildly off, or if you've seen anything developing in the meta that you think is interesting, be sure to put it down in the comments and yeah, join the Discord, have a chat with us, let us know what you think, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Nice.
Cheers.
Cheers for watching. See you later.